Welcome to the Charlie Paparelli Show. I'm Charlie Paparelli, and this show is for entrepreneurs to help them start companies and to build those companies into great companies. And the way we do it is I interview entrepreneurs, some that are in the midst of building a company, those that have, and maybe are on their second company, and others that have exited their companies and did really, really well. So that's what we're about, and that's what we do. If you don't want to miss an episode, I would ask you to go to paparelli.com and just submit your email. Today, I have a very special guest, and we got a really interesting topic. The topic is really going to be around, if I just had a really good idea, if I knew what it was, I'd start a company around it. And I run into so many entrepreneurs that are in that stage, either people that hadn't started before, or people that want to start one, but are looking for the right idea. My guest today is Christian Ries. He is a serial entrepreneur. He's now he is the co-founder and CEO of Zeto, Zeto. Zeto's mission is to eliminate the frustrations of home ownership by being a trusted home manager to every household in America. That's a pretty big vision there, right there. I met Christian at the Atlanta Tech Village when he and his partner asked me to advise them on this new company that they had started called Johnny On It. That was a few years ago, and Christian raised a lot of money and actually built a company and rolled it out to multiple cities with him and his partner. It was a high growth company there for a while. But we'll talk about that some later. Christian came to America from South Africa on a golf scholarship to Georgia. At that time, he was part of the inner circle of the promising young South African golfers who were looking to become professionals. And he didn't turn professional. I understand from friends that he's still a tremendously competent golfer, but he's still friends also with those who have turned pro in those South African golfers. He went into business instead of into golf professionally. And eventually he satisfied his purpose in becoming an entrepreneur. He started a company, as I said. He raised money for it. And he did a multi-city rollout, and really interesting company. And it really helped, I think, contribute to where this company is going, Zeto. The last time Christian and I talked, he was about to join Atlanta Ventures Studio as an entrepreneur in residence. He works there at the studio with David Cummings, who's a very successful entrepreneur in our city. He is a huge tech investor in multiple billion-dollar type valuation companies. He's also the owner of Atlanta Tech Village. He's really helped build our community, our startup community here in Atlanta. So kudos to David, and good for Christian to be working with him. Christian's goal in joining Atlanta Venture Studios was simple. He wanted to get to the idea that will allow him to start and build a big company. The result of this journey was Zeto. Today's topic, getting to the right idea. Welcome, Christian. Thanks for sharing with me, and thanks for sharing with my entrepreneur audience. I'm glad that you're here.
Charlie, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, why don't you do this? We'll start by, you got the shirt on. Why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about Zeto, so that people aren't sitting around wondering, what is this thing?
Yeah, so Zeto is a private home management company. If you think about all the time and frustration that it takes to manage your private residence, it's a lot. It can be a lot. And it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort, scheduling vendors, making sure that your house is not falling apart. Now, what resources do we have today? Do we go onto Home Advisor or Angie's List and press a button and then get bombarded with phone calls?
Yeah.
And we don't like phone calls, do we? Consumers like to text these days. So the idea was, could we create a private home management company that sits on a texting platform that if you've got any issue, you can just text it in, and there's a trusted resource on the other side.
So you become the personal home manager for these people. So
yeah,
all those vendors and everything, that's all handled by you. So if I got an issue with my home, I'm just going to text you and you're going to take care of it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. You've got that schedule behind you. You must be part of a pretty busy home yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting,
But you're a tech
Charlie.
guy. What do you got up there?
I know it's so. I'm married to Christy. She's here from Georgia, and we have 2 kids, 2 boys. Daniel is 7, and Jude is 4. He's about to be 5,
Mm-hmm.
and we just live a busy life. Christy works full time. I work full time. And our kids, Daniel just started rugby, and our kids are just busy. We're no different than any of our customers. And if you just look at our schedule in the back here, it is busy. So when something happens, or that to-do list, when Christy says, "Hey, Christian, can you make sure this gets done? Can you make sure that gets done?" Yeah, I'll make sure it gets done, but not today. And then she's going to remind me in about a week's time, "Hey, did you get that done?" And I'm like, "Angel, I really am busy. Like, I don't have time to do and rearrange a clothing rack that has fallen in the pantry or in the dishwasher room."
Yeah.
I like. So
I like. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So then, where's the resource? So where do I go? So now I just text it in and say, "Hey, I need you guys to fix the clothing rack in my laundry room. Mm-hmm. I need you guys to fix the bottom of the staircase because it gets wobbly. The kids play on it. I've got a broken window in the front yard because Daniel threw a baseball through it."
Yeah.
And these things happen. Life happens. And I just text it in, and it just gets added to my list. Once it gets to a certain point, then the Zeto team comes out for half a day and just knocks it all out. And quite frankly, now they knock it out while I'm not even at work, while I'm not even at home. So, it's interesting.
That was interesting.
It's just the way it should be.
It is. Well, I don't know if it should be that way. It would be nice to be that way, right? One of the things that I saw is that you have a client testimonial on there about a guy that was traveling from upstate New York or something, coming home, and he realized that his house was 92 degrees in the summer, and there must be something wrong. And then he texted you guys, and within 24 hours, by the time he even got there, it was all fixed, which was pretty amazing, and he just sings your praises. He says, "I'm going to tell everybody about this service."
Yeah, our customers are, they're amazing, and they're busy. And the fact that they're busy and they're starting to share with their neighbors and their friends about their Zeto experiences is kind of testimonial to what the team has been able to accomplish, and kind of the way that we've been going about it over the last year, trying to find the way to honor our customers correctly, find the way to honor our vendors correctly. And then also, if the toughs were, as you said, they were coming home from a 17-hour car ride from Rhode Island, and they get into their home in Buckhead, and it is scorching hot. Well, within an hour, the CEO of Cool Pro, the founder of that company himself, was on premises fixing it for them.
Wow. Well, the guy is clearly what we know as raving fans. All right. And if you have them all lined up like that, you're going to do really well. But the last time that we talked, we were having a cup of coffee, and you said, I think I'm going to join this Atlanta Studio Ventures because I really want to be an entrepreneur. I just came out of Johnny On It, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that a little bit, but I wasn't sure. I was like, okay, so what are you going to do there? And you said, well, at Atlanta Studio Ventures, what they do is they get guys like me who are entrepreneurs. Some have experience, some don't, most do. And what we're looking for is that next idea that we can build a company around. And Atlanta Studios will then go, I guess Atlanta Ventures must fund some of these companies, right? And make it all work. So it's sort of a package. And it's, I know David Cummings, he likes coming up now. He's learned it's a lot more fun to come up with ideas than it is to do the day-to-day work of building them out. Okay. So it's good that he's in that enviable position at this point. So you went over there. So tell me what your experience was, in taking that position. So what were the discussions like, with David and the team that he has over there?
Yeah, so a couple things is for guys and girls like me, right? That are joining the studios, and studios are becoming more prevalent as we see it. They seem to be popping up all over the place. But yes, for sure.
Well, studios are different than accelerators or incubators, right?
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yes.
Yeah. The other two are more about companies that are already started and you're really looking to, like an incubator is you started a company and you're looking to build the idea. Excuse me, yeah, an incubator. An accelerator is I've come up with this idea. How do I get it sort of launched into getting some product market fit? And when you're even further back now, further down the chain to studios, which are real idea formulation and investigation.
Yeah, it's quite a process, and it's a cool experience. And this is what drew me to it. So I sat down with David and John Birdsong, one of the partners there. David's really surrounded himself with some amazing people, and I'm sure their names will pop up in this conversation. But David asked me a couple questions, and John asked me a couple questions around, tell me a little bit about your experience with Johnny on it. What was that like? Was it pushing a boulder up a hill, or was it standing on top of a mountain, rolling a piece of snow down it, and it just grabbing so much momentum that your job as a founder is, can I just keep it in the guardrails? Can I just keep it in the guardrails as this thing just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger? And my response was, as much fun as I had at Johnny on it and building it with that team, oftentimes I'd wake up and I'm like, this is really hard, pushing this boulder up a hill. And their thought process is, if we build a company the right way and we have the right idea and we go through the ideation process, we talk to customers and we have the customers, and it's in a arena or a market that is growing, that there's potential, then you'll quickly see that you're standing on top of a hill and you're rolling that boulder down the hill and it's just grabbing momentum. And then your job as a founder is just to keep it in place.
Really?
And yeah. And I said, well,
I mean, that's possible. Yeah, I never saw in all the startups I was in, it was always rolling it uphill, hoping to get it over the top so that it would start going downhill, you know?
So I'm with you there. I've never heard that analogy before. And
to say I could start at the top of the hill with this little rock and let it start rolling down, and all of a sudden it's going to be this giant boulder. I've just never heard that I didn't know it was possible.
I didn't know it was possible. Charlie, we're 8 months into this project with Zeto, and it feels like we're on top of the hill, and we're just trying to keep the wheels on this thing, because it is just growing momentum. You get customers that are sending unsolicited emails by me to their friends and their neighbors saying, "Hey, you need to join Zeto." And I'm like, "Yeah, come on." And then before you know it, we've almost tripled our customer base in the last 6 weeks. And now I'm like, oh my goodness, we need this yesterday already, and we need team members to come in and help support us and support our customers. And I said to them the other day, right before Christmas, I was like, this is, I now understand the feeling that you guys were talking about. This feels right. This feels like I'm on top of the hill.
So you talked about, but when he asked you the question about, will you roll on the boulder uphill on Johnny on it, okay, versus it going downhill like you're talking and gaining momentum. Let's talk a little bit about that Johnny on it thing then. So where did the idea, talk a little bit, where did the idea for Johnny on it? That was your foray, in effect, into entrepreneurship. So can we talk a little bit about Johnny on it and then come back to sort of this idea formulation? Because I think they play out a little bit together here.
Yeah.
I suspect at least.
No, they will. I want to make just a quick correction to my intro, if that's okay. I actually did play, and I'll tell you why I'm doing this. I actually did play professional golf for 5 years.
Oh my
And
God, I am. That's an
yeah,
insult. I'm so sorry.
no. I'm not saying that in a braggadocious way or anything like that. But I got injured, and then kind of that's where my path kind of changed. But
So who did what
golf.
sport were you on?
So I was on the Sunshine Tour. We played some European Tour events through that tour as co-sanctioned events. I was on the Hooters Tour at the time, Monday qualifying up here. But yeah, I'm not mentioning this to talk about my golf career. What I am mentioning, the reason why I'm mentioning that is um, I've been passionate about golf since the age of 7.
Wow.
When my dad told me at age 12, you got to start picking what you want to do for a career at age 12 in South Africa. And okay, I guess we play golf. My dad and mom said, well, that's a pretty lofty goal. And if you want to do that, we've got to give out 10,000 hours. We've heard that phrase before. If you want to become a professional at anything,
The
you
Malcolm
gotta, you
Gladwell
gotta,
book had that. Yeah,
yeah.
10,000 hours, right.
So I said, okay, cool, no problem. That's what I want to do. So my dad would wake up at 4:30, would be on the range at 5:15 in Cape Town, and just like the work ethic just started building. Anyways, long story short, got a scholarship all same year, and then went through the whole thing, played professionally, got injured, left that. But since I left the game, I've had this restlessness around me where I've got to do something on my own.
Tell
I've
me a
got
little
to
bit before you get there.
pioneer.
Tell me about, so you got this work ethic that you put in place. I mean, if you're moving to be a professional, I'm sure you were like the Tiger Woods machine kind of thing that you think about. These guys are practicing all day long. How long was the practice that you went through? What was your practice routine? Just curious.
Yeah, a regular day from the age of 12, 13, 14 was up at 5 or 4:45 on the range from 5 to 7:30. I'd be at school from 8 to 2, and then back on the range from 2:30, 2:45 to about 7 o'clock.
And
Yeah.
then you would do your homework for school.
Yes, I would do my homework for school. I
But do
wouldn't say
golfers have it? Is it hard as a golfer,
no.
somebody who's seeking to be a professional golfer like that? Here you are, I guess you were in middle school and then you went to high school doing this. Do you have friends while you're doing that? It sounds it sounds like a very lonely sport. It's not like I'm practicing to be a baseball player. I'm practicing to be a rugby player in your case, right? Being from South Africa, or football, because that's team sports. I mean, you're on the range, you and a bucket of balls.
Yeah, and in South Africa, you actually hit the bucket, and then you go pick your golf balls up, and then you take them back, and then you hit them again. Because
well, you better hit them straight, or you're spending an awful lot of time walking around.
Yeah, so we'd always mention on the range, like, hey, look at my cluster, and the goal was to hit into a cluster, so you have to walk too far. But tons of friends, tons of good friends. We've a lot of my friends, they would come play with me. Their ambition wasn't as to become a professional golfer. It was just more like, hey, we like golf, and Christian plays golf every day, so let's play with him twice a week or 3 times a week, amongst their other sports. But yeah, no, crazy work ethic, and it just really led to an opportunity that that you can see the world. I mean, I spent high school. I was in high school. I remember this. I think the record must still stand. I spent 77 days in high school, at school.
What does that mean? I mean,
I barely went to school.
Oh, okay.
I was traveling the world. I was playing golf. I was playing tournaments. I was doing my thing. And
so you were chosen as one of the, as I did say, you were part of an elite group of young, promising professionals. Or what?
Yeah.
Would
So
right?
yeah. So I competed with guys like Charles Schwartzel and Louis Oosthuizen, and who's a household name. They're household names today.
Yeah.
Albert Kruger, Thomas Aiken. Those types of guys were in my in my group.
Okay.
Myself and Albert and Louis and Charles, we won the world championships in Japan, which is pretty cool. Yeah, but we compete. That's just what we did in South Africa. It's a weird dynamic that South Africa just breeds these great little golfers and crazy work ethics.
One of the things that I did is I talked to a friend of mine, and he was a very gifted golfer at a very young age. He actually went to a D1 college here in the Southeast. And I said, "Did you become a professional?" And he goes, "No, I never did." And I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because everybody at that level are great golfers." He says, "The one thing that I didn't have that the professionals had is I didn't have it between the ears." That was that level of concentration and all that. Can you talk to a little bit about that? Because you must have had it if you hit the pro tour, and certainly Louis did, and Charles does. Charles, is that his name?
Charles.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What is he?
Yeah.
What is he talking about?
It's a famous quote. Golf is played on the shortest golf course on earth. It's 6 inches between your two ears.
Yeah.
That's where the game of golf is played. Yeah. I mean, I think when you are watching that history, and I'm pleased by no means saying that I'm Michael Jordan or anything like that. Like he's certainly the GOAT in the basketball arena.
No, but
as you watch that,
you have something that they had. They might have had it. They might have been better at it. Okay. Or they were better. They were more skilled than you were. Okay. I don't know what it was, but I'm talking about this mental toughness. You're all practicing hard, but then there's this mental piece. I don't know if it's something developed. I don't know if it's something that's God gifted. You see?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
What I was going to say is that in that documentary with Michael Jordan, you kind of see him always competing like where they're throwing quarters against the wall and who can get that closest to the wall. There's that competition. From a young age, I played for, my parents were middle South Africans, middle class South Africans. My dad, one time, he would take Coke bottles to the store, collect Coke bottles and take them to the store and, that type of thing, sell towels, and he was in the insurance game as well. So just trying to figure it out as a young guy, my dad was.
Yeah.
And I remember that I had to compete, and I did compete with my friends for golf balls. So instead of saying, "Hey, let's play for $5," I'll be like, "Hey, let's play for 3 practice balls in the front 9, and then 3 practice balls in the back 9, and then another 3 for overall." So that I could walk away and take their practice balls and put it in my practice bag. So from a young age, like that level of competition just drove me, and I think that also creates competitiveness and mental strength as well. So yeah, it's notorious. We'll pick a tree limb and we'll pick up stones.
But that's the competitive nature of it. What was this guy that I was?
We'll see who throw them closest to the.
You kind of broke up there for a while and froze up.
Okay.
Yeah. So the
sorry, I had something to pop up onto my screen.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay. Ending any other programs could help too. The other, but this guy, when he talks about mental toughness, and I saw this when I went to the Masters one time and I followed Tiger Woods. He's almost like an automatron walking down the fairway. It's just so focused. There could be 1 million people on both sides of that fairway, but when the way he was walking and the way he was looking, he was all alone on that fairway. He was all alone on that golf course. I've never seen anything like it. It was spooky. All right. So how did you practice some of that?
I think you get used to it at a certain point, and people just become like trees anyways. It's if they're lying down the fairway, it's trees are lined down the fairway. It's just like, you've got a job through, and you're focused on trying to get that job. You're trying to play the course strategically. You're trying to, you've got a plan that you're trying to execute, and if you execute it well, it's good entertainment for everybody else. So you just got to kind of.
The reason I'm bringing it up,
yeah.
and I'm digging down into this a little bit, is because
Sure.
all of it is part of who we are and who we will become. Okay. So here you got your work ethic was put in place very early in life. It's interesting to have such a clear goal. At 12 years old, you have your father says you're going to have to pick a profession. At 12, I want to be go-kart driver. I mean, what do I want? What do I want to be? I want to be a fireman. I want to be a policeman. I want to be, right? I mean, the easily identified sort of occupations. So you want to be a professional golfer, as some kids want to be professional baseball players or whatever. So you have to have the work ethic to move ahead. So you learned work ethic early. The other is this idea of focus. So many young people are distracted by so many different things, and here you are. You had to learn not only to develop your competitive nature, which I think is God-given in many, many cases, okay, but also this focus that you had to have that ability. So then you wind up going to college here in the States, right? And what happened? What happened there? How did that progress your career? And what did you learn by moving to the States now? So now you're not one of the promising group that's in South Africa representing South Africa. And now you're on your own. You're Christian Ries, the guy that talks funny. We don't know where he's from.
In all transparency, I called my dad after about 3 months when I came to the United States, and I was like, this place is terrible. This is not what I signed up for. I don't understand the people. They don't understand me. It's the weather is different. The conditions are different. The grass is different. I mean, everything is different. And I was like, Dad, I wanted to come home. I want to turn pro, like Charles and Louis. And I think we can have success. And, my dad just sat down and he's like, let's just call a spade a spade. You're not as good as them.
Whoa.
He's like, they're another level above you, and you need to get an education and you need to go get better. And I was like, okay, well,
did you know
that far back? Well, when we won the tournament, the world champs in Japan, I believe Charles or Louis, whichever order they finished, I think third individually in the world, and the other one finished like fifth, so it's like third, fifth, and then I finished 12th. I mean, man, that's amazing.
I think that is amazing. That's pretty close. How many people were there?
Probably about 50 or 60 countries. So,
and you were, but personally, you're saying, so 50, 60 countries, now you're talking hundreds of people, right?
Yeah. It's probably a field of 100, 120, 18-year-olds that are
so you're 12th. 12th is good. 12th is better than good. It's
not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get, and my dad was right. If we just had a look at it, they were just competing at a different level than I was. And
but was it a half a stroke around, or was there something to it, like their mental game or anything? What was it that made him say that? Why were they better?
Yeah, it's here's the difference. So they would go to Europe and play in the Irish Amateur, and they'd play and win the Irish Amateur. I would go to Europe and play in the Scottish Stroke, and I'd win the Scottish Stroke. I'd win the juniors. I'd win the Dutch juniors under 18. They would like level up.
So go ahead. We did break up for a second. I put us on pause, and now we're just coming back. So go ahead.
Yeah, so they would go to the Irish amateur events and win. I would go to the Scottish stroke play or the Dutch stroke play for juniors and win.
Yeah,
there's just there's a different level of junior to amateur, and I wasn't winning the amateur stuff. Yet, and deep down in my gut, I just knew I needed to go get an education as well, because golf is fickle. Whether you make it or not is a coin toss sometime.
So when your father told you, when your father said, "Let's face it, you're not as good as those two guys," okay? What was your thought when you heard that? I mean, it's one thing to think it; it's another thing for your father to tell you.
Well, then I'm going to go prove my dad wrong, and I'm going to go become one of the best in America, where I was a small fish in a big pond, and and that's what I did. Yeah.
So you joined
three-time All-American, and I won the NCAA's Division II individually.
Whoa! Congratulations!
Yeah,
those are some great.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is what it is. Those are the results you get if you consistently play well. And I had a good time, but work ethic was crazy, and I just applied that year. And after 6 months, I sat down with a mentor at the time, and I was like, I'm not enjoying this. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think American people are a little weird. And he said, Christian, I'm gonna give you a book. And he gave me a book by Dale Carnegie called How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's one of the books I gift today to people.
Oh my God.
And he's like, you need to take your ego, put it aside. And, there are some amazing individuals and people in this country. And, fast forward 20 years, I'm married to an American wife. I'm American now. It is a great,
and your kids are Americans.
My kids are American. I love this country. Americans are so generous, like just overly generous. And it's amazing. So once I got over the culture, and, cultural changes for young kids are different, right? They are different. And it takes time. So any advice that I give, when asked by a youngster for advice on how to navigate that, I'm just like, whatever you do, give it 6 months. Just give it 6 months, commit and stay. 6 months, you'll quickly see that American people as a whole are just overly generous and just fantastic people.
But there is a point that, for all of us, I think that when we get into something that's strange, it's like Americans going to Europe. What are the things that we do is we say, can you believe they do this? And can you believe they do that? Because I'm the standard that's right. And they're obviously screwed up, right? And here you are. That's what you did when you came to the States. You're like, what is wrong with all these people? Don't they know how to act? I mean, they don't seem courteous to me, or whatever you were saying, And at some point you got to go like, what if they're the right standard and I'm the wrong standard? Or there's something in between, because you can't lose your identity either. So that was part of your growth also as you became an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And, like a quick sidestep story, but when I first got you, I mean, I love golf. I mean, I want to get better. So I want to play on the weekends too. Right.
Yeah.
And nobody would play with me on a Saturday afternoon. And I was like, this is so weird. Why can't I get a game on a Saturday afternoon with these?
You mean walking on the course?
Yeah.
People would actually say, I don't want to play with that kid?
Yeah. Well, my age, like in college. And the reason why is because they were at this thing called a football game, which I had no idea about. So they're like, Christian, let's not play next Saturday. Why don't you come with us and we'll take you to a game? And you go to your first game and you're like, this is where everybody is. There's 100,000 people in Auburn. There's 150,000 people in Athens. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, no wonder they don't want to play golf on a Saturday afternoon.
That's a great story.
Yeah. I don't play much golf on a Saturday afternoon these days.
Sounds like that was your first marketing lesson. Where are all the people? I love that. What did you think you took away from your 5 years on tour? What did you take away that you brought forward that became a part of what makes you successful?
It's really hard. You got to have grace for yourself. You got to work hard. You got to surround yourself with a team. There's no such thing as I. Entrepreneurship is hard. Sometimes you feel like you're an island, and it goes a long way when you have a co-founder with you. It goes a long way when you've got teammates with you that are bought into the mission and vision for what you're trying to create. And it's no different in golf. I had a golf coach. I had a nutritionist. I had a person that helped me in the gym, physical trainer. I had a mental coach. And if you start thinking about it, it's I play well or I perform based on the team's effort.
Wow.
Very, very few people think like, yeah, I'm just so good. It's all about me and I, and it's actually us and we that get you there. If you see any of these guys on the PGA Tour, the reason why they're playing well is because they can purely focus, and they've got a team behind them at that level as a management team as well, right? And all the different things. So you can apply that same logic to entrepreneurship, which is you have to have a team. Like I think the reason why we're sitting on top of the hill with Zeto, which feels like the top of the hill for me, might not be, but is we've got an amazing team at the Atlanta Venture Studios. I mean, you've got Song who helps with like thinking through sales and like, hey, what does that look like? How do we communicate with customers? You got AT Gimbal from a financial perspective and customer experience perspective. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, let's think through this. How does this make sense from a business model perspective? And then you've got one of their newer partners, Catherine O'Day. She's excellent operations and customer success. She was the operation COO of Rigor, and they just exited. So they bring a lot of experience. And then you've got JC who helps with marketing, how to think through communication, and like, hey, we need to. What does the brand look like? Let's have these conversations up front. Yeah. And then you've got David as well, kind of saying, hey, let's make sure that we are, fitting into authentic demand, which is a key word for us.
It's interesting that you bring that. I think that's a great analogy when you talk about golf for just a moment again, and I'm going to bring it right back to the team that's surrounding you now. But when you're talking about golf, I had a friend of mine when he was playing golf. I used to play with. I don't play anymore, but when I used to play, I'd say, Mark. His name was Mark. I said, Mark, how many? It seems like you've got a lot of thoughts when you're standing over the ball. He goes, thoughts. He goes, I have like several people having a conversation in my head about about all of the options that have to happen or could happen or should happen. He goes, that's all happening to me while I'm standing over the ball. Now, when you have a team like you're talking about, and in golf, when you finally get to that first tee, you're in pure execution mode with high confidence. You know exactly what you need to do. You're standing over the ball. You're not thinking of anything except to where it's going to land, kind of a thing, The versus this Mark, and here you are now surrounded by a very competent team there at Atlanta Technologies. Is it Atlanta Technology Studios?
It's Atlanta Venture Studios.
Atlanta Venture Studios.
Atlanta Ventures.
So it is Atlanta Venture. So with Birdsong in the group, AT, it takes a lot of that. Should we do this? Should I do that? Should I say this on the call or should I say that on the call? Should I have this operation strategy or should we do these other three things, right? That's the guy that has a conversation. It's like every execution step is a conference with 10 people. And that's why it's a mess. Now, when you did Johnny On It, you didn't have that kind of team in place. So were you more like Mark in that regard when you were doing Johnny On It versus being, Christian Ries getting on that first tee as a professional with that whole team behind him?
I had a different team at Johnny On It.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I had a different team at Johnny On It. And, as we're progressing here and we'll come back to Johnny On in just a second. As we're progressing here with Zeto, we're building our own culture and our own team. So now we've got Casey and Kelsey that have come on, and we've got others that are joining as well. Uh-huh. So, you kind of transition into your own team and culture. But at Johnny On It, we had a different team. So I think before I made the comment on like the golf, and we kind of went down that road there, you asked me how did I come into the idea of Johnny on it,
Yeah.
and I'll loop it back because it's a good starting point.
Yeah, good.
I was restless. I was very restless because I've had this North Star with golf, and suddenly it just gets swept out underneath me.
Wow.
And now I'm just like, okay, what am I going to do next? So I go and join Aflac, and I'm in the sponsorship division. I'm like, oh, I can't do that. I've got to go do something else there. And I go and find my way onto one of their tech platforms that they were building in a kind of like a startup inside of a corporation, which was immensely fun and learned a lot. That's kind of where I got my learning stripes, but still restless. And from there, I'll go down to Tampa as a sales trainer for the organization, and to help kind of set up this new technology down in Central Florida. And everything is going well. I mean, we had, I made President's Club the first year that I was down in the field on the sales side. Just, super humbled and thankful for that. But, it's hard work and all that jazz that goes with it. Still restless. I mean, I am
because the question
idiot.
really becomes, is this it? Is this it? Right? I mean, am I pointed in the right direction? I love that I lost my North Star at such a young age. It's hard to do. I always wondered what happens to these professional athletes at 24 years old when that's all they've known all their life, and now they're not that anymore.
I often sit if I know of a professional and they have abruptly stopped their career, whether it because of injury, retirement, it doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
I will ask them a direct question. I'm like, hey, from former athlete to now a former athlete, how are you dealing with your depression? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like,
you're not asking them if they're depressed. You're telling them how they deal with it, right? Yeah.
I'm like, coming into transitioning back into society takes time.
Yeah.
Like it just takes, you got to learn new skills. You got to have new conversations, because let's be honest, we don't want to talk about golf all day. We want to talk about other things. And you're in this whole world. So, but I lost my North Star, and I couldn't quite figure it out. I mean, I think the only idiot who goes to a President's Club for a Fortune 200 company, sits at the table with one of the presidents and pitches for an investment in a startup idea that I have that I want to go launch. Who does that?
Someone who doesn't want to be working at that corporation very long.
And the response I get was, have you thought through this idea? I'm like, oh yeah. What do you think? And like, is there nothing at this company that we can do to keep you? And I was like, oh, no. I'm leaving. It's just a matter of when. And I'm just saying this so matter of factly. It's like, it's kind of comical when you think about it now that I look back. I'm like, hey, it's really hard to get to those events, and you got to work really hard. And everybody there are champions to a sense, and here I am.
Did you think through the implications of that conversation, or you just had it?
I just had it because I was like, I need capital to go launch this.
That comes from you being that professional golfer with that focus. It's sort of like the dog with a bone, right? I don't care where I am. This is what I'm on right now, right?
Yeah.
All the people sitting at that table except you and that president, all of those guys were trees. You were just looking at him. Okay, I love it.
I'm like, you own a home, right? Finding a vendor is really challenging. And he's like, Christian, what are you doing? I'm like, sorry. Didn't think about the setting. Can I email you about this later?
Yeah, right. So what happened from there?
Well, the reason why that happened is I was actually, I met a couple guys at church in Tampa, and they are entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And Christy, my wife, she was having our second child, and she had this experience that some ladies have called baby brain, where you just forget. while you're pregnant, sometimes you just forget. And she put the basin, she started the water in the basin on the second floor of our townhouse in Tampa and forgot. And it was flooded down. So she calls me, I'm in the office, and she's like, hey, I've got this crisis. Can you help? I said, okay, sure. Yeah, no problem. So I go onto Google like most people do, and I'm like, plumber in Tampa. The first two don't return my calls. The third one responded and said, yeah, I can be there next week. And I'm like, dude, there's water gushing down. I've got a family. My wife's pregnant. She's crying. I need help. Call somebody else.
Wow.
And I said, that experience just absolutely sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And we deserve a better experience. And I think that's when like Uber was starting to gain traction and Airbnb was starting to gain traction, and the word Ries started, I think that was about 4, 5, 6 years ago, where people were like, oh, this needs to be Uberized or that needs to be Uberized. Yeah. And I fell into that trap where I was like, well, why can you not just Uber a plumber? Mm-hmm. And I went to Christy and I said, hey, I've got this idea of how this starts. And Christy's concerned. She's not me. I am me. And I was like, well, I think we need to go launch this company. Mm-hmm. She's like, what are you talking about? I said, well, I've done some research. It doesn't exist. So I'm just going to hop in and do it. And she's like, well, where are you going to get money? And I said, well, I own my car outside in cash. So she's like, you can't touch our savings. I was like, okay, cool, whatever. So I sold our car, took $10,000 equity out of it, got a beat up 2005 Honda, and took $10,000 and started Johnny on it. So now my work day was 9 to 5 was with Aflac, and then I'd come home, have dinner, put the kids to bed, and then from 9 to midnight, I would be working on Johnny on it. And then from 4 to 7, I'd be working on Johnny on it. So, back to that thing. And then my friends that I became friends with regularly, they were like, hey, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you got to jump. You can't do both. So
because how long was it before you had that conversation and you jumped?
I went to Christy and I said, I need to jump. And she said, okay, you can jump if there's $70,000 in the company's account. So I said, okay, no problem. Google how to raise capital.
Okay. I love how your board of directors is Christy, and she's just setting the bar for you. This is great.
I
think it's wonderful how you honored her. So you Google how to get funding.
Yeah, and 2 months later, we had $70,000 in the bank, and really? I put my notice in. Yeah.
Well, how did you raise that first $70,000?
Family and friends. I had the idea, created a pitch deck, and told them, hey, my North Star is changing. I'm starting to find it. I'm really excited about this. I think there's an opportunity. There's a real problem, and we need to go do it. And they're like, Christian, we can see you're not happy. You're at Aflac. Yeah. So good luck.
So how much did you raise?
70,000.
So you raised to 70. You hit your milestone. Christy was again surprised.
She was surprised. Yeah. And then
and what happened? You're in Tampa, right?
We're in Tampa, and I was like, oof, I need a team around me real fast. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't do this alone. I'm making mistakes. And so I called my former boss at Aflac and I said, hey, what are you doing? And he was currently working at PwC. He had unfortunate health experience where he had a stroke, but wicked smart, very, very bright. And him and I he's the yin to my yang. Like, we just go along very well. And I
met him. He was a very sharp guy.
Very sharp. And I called him up and I was like,
likable guy. I mean, somebody who's very compatible with you. I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he is a great guy. So I called him up and I was like, hey, 10,000, put 10,000 in, let's go build this. So he did. And he was like, hey, condition, you got to come to Atlanta. So I said, okay, cool. We'll come to Atlanta. Hey, Christy, we're moving to Atlanta.
And by now, do you have, did she have the baby?
She did, yes.
So that was one child. That was your first child?
Second, yeah.
Second.
So two kids.
You, Christy, and the two kids moved to Atlanta.
Actually, we moved to Columbus, Georgia, back into with her mom. Oh, and then I commuted from Columbus, Georgia to Atlanta, Georgia. It was about an hour and a half. To Buckhead's about 2 hours every day.
Wow.
So I'd wake up at 4:30 in the car, 5 hours in town by 7:30. Yeah.
So that helped a lot. If she was with her mom, then that makes sense because, I mean, you got a baby, you got a child, and you have a little child, and you have an infant. Mother needs a lot of help. Okay. So is that when I met you at Atlanta Tech Village?
Yeah, that's when we had a very different conversation.
Okay. What was that conversation?
Oh, what are you doing? This is entrepreneurship is tough. You've got two kids at home. You just gave up this corporate gig that you were doing very well at. And yeah, I was just so headstrong that this is what we're doing.
Was this the conversation we had?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I was the guy who was speaking reality.
Yeah, you breathed reality into it, and I did not like that. So I put your name on a wall, along with everybody else's name on the wall that said we couldn't build something. And I said, well, I'm going to prove them all wrong. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, it's that competitive drive.
You did something else from that conversation that I thought was really mature. It was a hard conversation, because there was two things. Yeah. So it was a conversation about where you are in your life, meaning with your family, because we don't have a work life and a family life. Particularly as an entrepreneur, you have a life. Okay. And so Christy's into this company and your two kids are in this company just as much as you're in this company. All right. We're all in. All of our lives are dependent upon this company. So I always kind of bring that up with entrepreneurs. And the second thing is you asked me, you said, why are you down? Why don't you like this business? And I remember talking to you about this whole idea of really selling B2C, so business to consumer, and how difficult that was and how expensive it is to build brand among consumers and all. And you started asking me, you said, so what else? And what else? What else bothers you about? What about that? And I asked you after that conversation, which it was tough. And I remember walking away going, why was I so tough on this guy? Why did I go down that road? And, was I just in a bad mood? Was I suffering depression that day? What was going on? And you came back. It was about a week later we ran into each other and you said, I really want to thank you for getting with us. And I was like, really? I thought you would never talk to me again. And you said, no. We went back and I wrote down, all of your objections and the things that were concerns. And a lot of them were good concerns. And we need to address those things. So you took what could have been a negative conversation and turned it into a real big positive. So that really impressed me about you.
Thanks. I believe we pivoted the company shortly after that conversation, if I was not mistaken. Mm-hmm. B2C is hard. You're very right. That is 100% accurate. We moved it into a B2B2C, so we changed our customer shortly after that, which ended up giving us the momentum that we needed.
So when you did that, how did you raise money? So here you're on this idea, how did you raise money to kind of keep going there? How did the business start to develop?
Yeah. So, we built a good little team around us, and we decided to focus on the realtor space. In the fact that we looked at the market as a whole, and we said, okay, where is home services used the most? If somebody's going to use an app, where is it used the most? And we looked at different markets, so condominiums, strip malls, the realtor, when people sell and buy homes. And then we looked at that and said, okay, cool. Well, there's a lot of transactions that happen when people buy homes and sell homes. Why don't we look there? So we went and set up some appointments with potential customers, brokers, and asked them, just tell us a little bit about this experience.
This is
And
real
they
estate
said,
brokers, you're saying?
yeah,
Right.
that's correct. So they said, well, it's the way we do it right now is on a spreadsheet, little black book. There's no process or technology behind it. So we thought, okay, great. What if we gave them a white labeled app that looked like Mark Spain that they could hand over to their customers? So the idea was there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Our financial model was horrible, which was hindsight, right? We didn't make money. We took 10% of every transaction, which by definition means you need a lot of transactions.
Yeah,
You're going to take a
and what
small
you
margin.
did, a lot of people don't know what we're talking about with Johnny On It. But Johnny On It, you gave an example of where the problem was when you had it. But Johnny On It was really, instead of being what Zeto is, which is I'm going to manage your household, okay, for all of these issues. You're still the manager, Mr. Homeowner. But if you need a plumber, don't go Google plumber, just use us, and we'll find the right plumber for you who's going to be certified and they're going to be safe and all that stuff. So you knew the plumbers, the electricians, the gardeners, the landscapers, all that people, right? That's what you were doing, which is very different than what you're doing now. Okay.
Yeah, completely different. Same overall space, but completely different.
Right.
And yeah, and then I just did what, I needed my family up with me here in Atlanta. I didn't want to make that commute anymore. And there's 3 or 4 coffee shops, one at the bottom of Atlanta Tech Village. There's one corner cafe, and there's 3 coffee shops, and I would just rotate them, and investor meeting after investor meeting after investor meeting after investor meeting. And sadly, 80% of my time was spent with investors raising capital. And I thought, and in all transparency, I also probably fell in love with the game. We were getting quite a bit of notoriety and all that stuff, and I was spending so much time trying to raise capital to sustain the growth that we were going that I wasn't spending enough time with the customer.
Did the growth feel like that momentum of the thing rolling downhill, or did the growth feel like what I call hard work, clean living? It's a sort of a battle to win every customer, if you will.
Yeah, it felt a little bit like that, pushing a boulder up the hill.
It did. Okay.
What made sense about Johnny On It is that the real estate community could see it. It's easy to see the problem. It happens to them every day. Every time they sell a house, there's a problem. Like there's a list of stuff that he's done, and there's always a battle of find people. So the problem was very visible, but the execution, and we were able to put in 24 months, we were able to put about $500,000 worth of work through the system. So we had a lot of good metrics. We had a 36% repeat customer rate. We had our average connection to a vendor was like 90 seconds. I mean, that's unheard of. But yeah, it's just, we couldn't quite. And then COVID happened, in all transparency. So we were heading in the right direction.
But you pointed out something else that happened too, is you said that your economic model wasn't right, the pricing model. It really put a tremendous amount of pressure on you because it pushed you to have to do like an inordinate amount of volume. If you're only getting 10% of every deal, you got to put in through a tremendous amount of volume in order to start making money, So as you look back on, and that's something that I think sometimes blinds entrepreneurs, is they're blinded by, this is a real problem. We're really solving this thing. This is something that's great. But the next question is, yeah, I see that, but can you make money doing it? What did you come out on that end?
I always heard, so as a first-time entrepreneur, and I'm so thankful for all the investors that backed me, and us in that journey. And you kind of hear this you hear this from investors, you kind of hear this in the community. Just build it and they will come. And then once you have the volume, then you can figure out how to make money. And you heard that from Uber, and it was in the headlines. So I had this mindset. It was like, let me just go get customers. Let me go solve a problem, and I'll figure out the financial model later. Well, the actual truth was 10% of every transaction didn't excite serial investors.
Yeah.
The financial, like the actual margins is between 20 and 35 to 40%. And I could never figure out how to get a vendor to pay 30 to 40% in our current model. And I guess we didn't pivot quick enough into something else to get there. So I always find it very interesting. I have the opposite feeling now. It's like, you got to make sure that somebody's willing to part with their dollar in the beginning. And if they do, then you've got something. And that's what we did at Zeto. We charged from the beginning. We charged for membership.
Yeah, but one of the things that you do differently too is I always say it's one that there's 5 steps that I always go through sort of as a test for an entrepreneur and a new idea. The first one is always what's the problem that you're solving, right? Then the second one is what's the solution to the problem? And then the third one is, who has the problem? And then you finally find that person who has the problem, and then you say, okay, how much are they willing to pay you to solve the problem? And then the last one is can I make money doing this if they pay me this amount of money doing this sort of a solution to solve this problem, right? You got to kind of work back up again. And a lot of times we get stuck in 1 and 2, meaning there's a problem, here's a solution to it. I don't know who to talk to about the problem because I don't know who really has it. That's a problem that people fall into a hole on. Okay. And then that next one, which is they never test whether people will pay them to solve the problem, some amount of money that makes sense. We live with a lot of problems in our lives that we just live with. We don't pay money to solve because when we look into it, we go like, no, I don't like to get up in the morning and make my own coffee and my breakfast, but it's a heck of a lot cheaper than having a maid and cook here who's going to take care of me. So I'll do it myself, but it's a problem, right? So,
sure.
So what happened?
You're exactly right.
What happened? So then the pandemic hit, you said, and all that. But what was the thing, if you look at Johnny On It, that you said, now that you're into a new venture, seeing something completely different with a team of people that have a lot of experience in starting companies, when you look at Johnny On It, you say, like, where were the yellow flags? You see, what should I have said? No, because I got all my deals. I could look back and go, that's when I should have pulled the funding. That's when we should have done the pivot. That's what, so what are those for you on Johnny On It?
Average startup, I read this somewhere the other day, average startup pivots 8 times before they find product market fit.
They pivot 8 times?
Yeah, the average startup, it's around 8 times before I read that somewhere. We had maybe 2 pivots.
Okay.
So the mindset was slightly different I was so committed on doing it this way that I was, that we just did not, we didn't have that open mindset of pivoting. And when I tell Zeto's story here in a second, you'll see the vast difference in how we executed.
I like that. I fell in love. Basically, I fell in love with the model that we were, or our strategy, or our solution, if you will. Okay, and our price. I just fell in love with it. I mean, this has got to be right. We just need to work harder at it.
Yeah, I mean, and you sit with investors, and they're like, "Man, this is a really smart idea."
Oh yeah.
Wow, you're doing really well. And
how come you didn't go to the investors? How come you didn't go to people like me or others who maybe passed on the deal and said, okay, here's what we're doing. We got investors behind it now. Let's do this again. Rip me apart. Did you do that?
Obviously not.
Right. Would you advise people to do that? Because that's painful. Who wants to have their baby called ugly, right? I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's not nice. It's not a nice feeling. But I think you have to, as an entrepreneur, you have to have an open mindset, and you have to have a bit of you got to be close to your customer. That's the vast difference between if I just compare comparisons. But Johnny on it, I was 80% of my time was raising capital. Right, so that's just what was needed at the time. I didn't know anybody in Atlanta. We're just trying to figure it out. Today, I'm only talking to customers. I know exactly what's going on in that household because I take customers for breakfast. I take them for lunch. We have phone calls, and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry I'm calling again, but I would love to know how this experience was. What are some of your problems? And we have hard conversations with our customers as well. And that feedback kind of keeps you moving in the right direction. And then eventually you see this change, and that change ignites momentum.
It is interesting, though, that we talk about investors, and investors do see or smell momentum. Okay. They smell the rolling down the hill thing. Okay. We can smell it, I think, because you see a lot of deals. And of course, you're in love with your model and what you're doing in your market and the problem you're solving. I get that, but you don't see the entire landscape of deals. So you look into this landscape as an investor, and you go like, "Man, that one's going to go. This one's going to be really hard, but that one's going to go." And so it's something to talk to. And one of the things that you can one of the things as an entrepreneur, I think you look at is say, how hard is it to raise money? And if it just stays hard, then there's something that you're not seeing. It's the falling in love thing. Okay. Because once you start doing momentum, I mean, you see people, they just had that guy that here I am trying to chisel out my next $250,000 round. This guy just closed a $2.5 million deal. He started his company 2 years after we started ours. How did he just close money like that? There's something that they saw. And so I think it is important to pay attention to those, how hard it is to raise money, to continue to raise money. You follow me? It's telling, it's absolutely telling us something when that happens.
Yeah. I wish I had that as an indicator when I was doing that.
Yeah. It's hard because you're in love. You're in love. I mean, that's it. You got to keep going with what you're doing. So how did you get to the piece where you said, we're not going to do Johnny on it anymore? Because I went through that once in my career, maybe more than once. And I can tell you, it's the most painful thing to go through, which is to call it over. I say that starting a company is what I learned is starting a company is the presence of all hope. Calling it an end to it is the absence of all hope.
That's good.
And
it's accurate.
And the people, the way they act on the startup when there's all this hope is one way. When it closes down in the absence of hope, it gets pretty ugly. Did you? So, did you have any of that experience? How did you get to the point where you said we can't do this anymore? Let's just start. That's probably the most telling piece because that's the hardest one to get to.
Yeah, I'm going to. You said something a little earlier that I found interesting, and if I knew this, I would have looked at my entrepreneurial lens slightly differently.
Okay.
You have family and you have your entrepreneurial journey. And as a first-time entrepreneur, that's exactly what I thought. They're a parallel road heading towards success. What in actual fact is they're right on top of each other. They're intertwined, and your family is with you on that journey, whether you like it or not. And so we are like fresh off the stage of Venture Atlanta, trying to raise our Seed Plus or Series A, whatever it was. And suddenly then the pandemic hits. And that was a really, really challenging time for that company, because we had 4 weeks of runway left, people on payroll. And unfortunately, I can deal with stress. When you're on the mini tours, trying to make it as a professional golfer, success is not, you're playing every week against 120 guys. There's only one winner. So 97 or 98% of the time of the year, you're losing. That's the mind. That is golf. That is just reality.
Wow.
And so I can deal with the bumps and bruises. It's just, I've been accustomed to it. What I did not realize is my family could not. So right at that, as the pandemic hit, unfortunately, Christy doesn't mind me sharing the story, but she came to me and she's like, "Hey, I'm really struggling with this. We've got 4 weeks of paychecks left, and like, who's paying rent next month? Because, we've got a pandemic. I can't go cut hair anymore." And I was like, "I'll figure it out." Well, at the same time, she's like, "By the way, I've been drinking and I need help." And that kind of just hit me like a ton of bricks.
Wow.
And Charlie, I'll kind of summarize this kind of pretty quickly, but right there, your first thing is you're a husband, then you're a father, then you're an entrepreneur, in my mind. And you quickly realize that, I realized that, man, Chrissy really needs me right now. And before I knew it, I was like, I'm a believer that everybody in life needs a second chance. We all make mistakes.
Yeah.
And I went to Christy and I was like, "Hey, would you consider getting some professional help around this?" She's like, "Sure." And that same day, we drove her to a rehab facility, and we saw her 6 months later. So right there, the next day, I'm a single dad, 2 kids, by the way, living in Buckhead. So the Atlanta public school system has gone virtual. And we've got 4 weeks left on runway. And suddenly I'm like, okay, wow, my world is just shaken. And
I can't imagine that level of pressure. I can't even imagine it. I don't think I think I would have either stayed in a fetal position in bed, which you can't because you got 2 kids, or but you've got, or I'm on my knees 3 times a day. I mean, praying to God to save me from this.
Well, I mean, that's just it. I mean, I cannot take any credit for the story and how it ends. Fast forward now, Christy is 23 months sober. She's doing fantastic. She's in a full-time job. She's back with us, but it's like God just brought people in my life at the right time. I mean, Bob Lewis, I know you talked to him. On your show, he called me up and he was like, "Hey man, what's going on?" I was like, "What do you mean what's going on?" With the pandemic hit, we've got 3 weeks of runway left. He's like, "Well, we were supposed to work together in the beginning of the year. So would you like some help?" And I was like, "Nope, sorry. Every expense of the company has gone to zero, nothing."
Yeah.
And he was like, "What else is going on with you, Christian? What's going on with you personally?" And I was like, "Nothing. Everything's fine, Bob." He was like, "Well, now that's a lie if I've ever heard one." And I was like, "Okay." It's like the Holy Spirit just told me, just talk to Bob. So I said, "Bob, Christy's in rehab. I'm a single dad, 2 kids, 3 weeks runway left. I don't know what to do. And he said, all right, well, you and I are going to start working together. I was like, I cannot afford you. He's like, I've never done pro bono in my life. I never will. But you and I are going to start working together right now. So I'll give you 1 hour a week, and we are going to make that hour just super productive. And he's like, first thing you're going to do is da-da-da. So we created a game plan on how to communicate to our investors, how to communicate just personal productivity.
Yeah.
I said, I've been wanting to pivot this company for a while now. He was like, let's do that. So send a note out to our investors. I was like, hey, we need to raise 100K. This is where we're pivoting to. I called one of our partners and I said, hey, we're pivoting to this direction. Are you in? They said, yes. I was like, you got to put a check in the mail if this is where you want to be. And they said, that's fine. We'll back it. And yeah, that's what happened. And so I'm trying to just juggle everything. The only time I could talk to anybody was between Jude's nap times from 1 to 3. So Bob had me schedule any call that I had with investors or with clients at that time. And yeah, the story gets worse. Unfortunately, this is not it just gets worse. So the day Christy comes back, I leave for South Africa to go say goodbye to my dad, who had got terminal brain cancer and got 3 months to live. So here I am. I'm like, my goodness. And then you and I want to honor our investors because they gave me the opportunity to build a company and to try and take their capital and return it at a fold, right? And so I went back to South Africa where I launched the pivot from my old bedroom with Berkshire. And Christy's back, and I've got all the pieces in place and support structure for her to perform and do well. And then we launched this thing with Berkshire, the pivot, and we're all excited. We've got all the marketing going. And 3 weeks later, there was just no movement. And that's when I knew. I was like, this is over.
Yeah, there was
so
none
I
of this.
came.
The rock wasn't rolling downhill, right? It was stuck. Nothing's happening, right?
Well, interesting thing, like the pandemic. So we moved it into like a financing option for getting your house ready to sell. So you do all the work and then you pay at closing for all the work that gets done. Great in concept. However, here's what the pandemic did. Houses started selling so fast that no work needed to be done. They were selling sight unseen. So the whole industry changed. Right. Right underneath that. And I was like, well, there was my one pivot.
Yeah. So when you decided, okay, this is it, who's the first person that you told?
I got in my car and I drove to my business partner's house. And I said, hey, we're done.
What did he say?
The writing's on the wall. He's like, I've been waiting for this conversation.
Oh, okay.
And it's sad that it's happening. I was hoping that pivot would work. I was like, yeah, me too. And it sucks because then you got to make all those phone calls to investors and you become friends with them. And it's just, it broke my heart. There's just
what kind of reaction did you get from the investors? Were they pretty much understanding? Were they angry? Were they, you just wonder sometimes as an entrepreneur in a situation like this, what's going to happen? How people going to, I really felt like I was a good steward. I worked as hard as I possibly could, and now it didn't work. Okay. And I got to get back to these people who put their hard-earned money into it. So what were the reactions that you got? What was the range of reactions?
I mean, my hand is shaking on the phone talking to these people because I'm so embarrassed and just saddened and like, what could I have done differently? And yada, yada, yada. So going through those questions, it was a combination. Some were upset. Some were like, hey, this sucks. Some were like, hey, let me know when I can send the next check. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, you're clearly going to go start something else. So I want to back a second-time entrepreneur.
How about that? Wow.
And I was like, are you kidding me? I just lost your money. And I'm like, Christian, you don't understand how this whole game works. We're back in the horse and we just And I was like, and I'm just like tears and crying, a lot of crying during those pandemic years. But
what did the angry people say?
just disappointment.
Oh, so it was disappointment. It wasn't anger. They was not accusing you of bad stewardship or any of that kind of stuff. You never.
No, I try to be as transparent as I can. It's when you go through a personal year like that, I think I don't know, maybe everybody in their lifetime goes through a personal year or so where they struggle, and that just, I feel like that happens to be my personal year, that I faced all those challenges. I was like, man, if only I could tell. I try to be as open and transparent as I could.
I think
you don't want everybody in your personal business.
No. I think that though, what's interesting with what's happened with, is her name Elizabeth Holmes, that Theros thing, that stuff, that case that went on, where there was pure misrepresentation of what was actually happening as she was raising money, because she had to get the money in, so she made it look better than it really was. I think that there's going to be more and more of a spotlight on entrepreneurs. I had a situation like this happen to me where I invested in a business thinking, yeah, it's going on. It looks like it. I didn't do my due diligence. I like the entrepreneur. I had some money in it to start with through some other fund. And I said, yeah, I'll write this check. And I wrote a check for $50,000. I hadn't heard anything after that. Didn't see the guy. I realized after about 60 days, so I'm not somebody that trails around with everybody. So I went and looked. I went to where his office was. I'm looking around, and I run into the guy that's the programmer. And I said, he's sitting there at 6 o'clock at night. I said, so man, where's such and such? And he goes, oh, he's gone. I said, he's gone. He goes, yeah, he's just gone. It didn't work out with him. He just left. I said, what do you mean left? He's just, it's only me now. I said, where's my money? He goes, well, it's still in the bank, I think. I don't know. But in 60 days, I lost 50 grand. Just like that, without the due diligence. And so you have to be careful when you're investing this money. You think that you understand that there's good character and people are taking care of it and good communication. One thing you had that you were really good at, you were a very good communicator. You stayed in touch with people, and that was to your benefit. A lot of people don't. They take the money and they go. And you hope that they come back to you and say, hey, it's been a great success, or we're growing and we're raising another round and we hit all our milestones. And no, but a lot of times it just doesn't work that way. So, I think it's going to be more difficult going forward is what I'm saying, is people are going to be more careful. So,
yeah. And I tried my best with communication, obviously not perfect all the time. But my mom and dad, as I grew up, they always told me one thing, you can, your character is all you have. And it takes a lifetime to build trust with somebody, but you can break it in a day. And
in a day, in a conversation. Yeah, really. Pretty amazing.
So, and that kind of leads into like the mission, some of our values here at Zeto, which is, we want to strive for excellence with our customers, and we want to have wisdom for them. What they don't know, we should know, so we can guide them accordingly. So
so what happened? So all of this is now Johnny on It is sort of folded up, completed. And you and I have this conversation over coffee, and then you go over to David Coving's place with John Birdsong over there. What was the process that you went through to get to this idea of what's this next venture for me? Because you said, look, I can go to corporate jobs, Charlie. That's not my North Star. I have to be an entrepreneur. And I told you, I said, man, coming out of unless it's sort of an idea is usually birthed out of some sort of market knowledge, it's very difficult to just sort of be an entrepreneur guy and says, well, there's an idea, and sort of fall in love with it enough to follow it. It's so artificial, this idea of studios to me. Okay, so that's why I'm real curious. How did this work?
Yeah, I was curious too. But I'll tell you what. I sat down with David and John in the end of December 2020.
2020. Yeah.
2020, yeah. Right as we shut down the one, I sat down with them on the other one. They said, "Hey, we'd love this opportunity, or here's the opportunity. We'd love for you to join it. We've got a whole bunch of ideas. You can pick whatever you want and go launch something. As long as there's authentic demand and we feel that authentic demand." And I said, "Okay, cool. I'll go do that." And they're like, "Hey, by the way, read this book called The Mom Test. It's 86 pages. It's a bright pink book. I've recommended it to several entrepreneurs. And it's just how to have customer discovery, how to really talk to your customers." And one of the ideas was around this home management. Like you've got commercial property management that exists today.
Yeah.
You've got second property, vacation property management that exists today. If you've got a second home, you get a property management company, you do that. It's no problem. But like, what about your resident, where you spend most of your time and you don't want to deal with all the junk that comes with it? And what about that? And then if you think about the home service as a whole, the industry is massive. It's really big. But then how's technology playing into it?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we think about is 10 years from now, what is it going to look like? Well, homes are getting smarter. We can't have a conversation here and somebody deny that homes are not getting smarter. They're getting smarter, right? I can pull up to my garage and that automatically opens. I can say, "Hey, Alexa, turn the kitchen light on," and my kitchen light should go on.
Yeah.
So it's getting smarter. So what is a home services industry going to look like with the trend of technology that's going this way? And how is it going to impact? We just believe that there's going to be it's going to be a lot more transparent, and it's going to be, people are going to be able to say, "Hey, Alexa, add this to my list." And then suddenly somebody's going to show up and it's going to get done. So
but was there
that's kind of the core thesis.
Yeah, I see that where you got to. But was there a process when you joined them? Did they have sort of a methodology or process that you went through? Because they said, "Yeah, come on over. We got a lot of ideas." And now you're explaining how you got the final stages on how the Zeto idea came up, okay? But which basically I would say is you're applying a lot of your experience from Johnny On It in that market, okay? And there must have been some sort of methodology that they had through the Mom Test book that you're talking about to kind of get you to where you are now.
So it sounds like that's the end point for Zeto. That's actually the genesis of, we take this idea, every idea goes through this genesis of, is this a big enough industry? What does that industry look like? Is there technology in it? Or is it so robust that there's so much technology? Like a fintech company. Do we want to go build another fintech company?
Yeah, right.
I don't know. There's a lot of them at the moment. Or cybersecurity. It's a big market, but OneTrust is doing a great job. They raised a lot of capital. There's a lot of incumbents in that space. Big markets
sometimes have very full rooms, right? Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right?
Yeah. So where can you disrupt? So that's the overall thinking of how you think through the market. And then you take that idea, you apply it. Well, does this fit? Well, there's another industry that's ripe for disruption is people are aging in homes right now. It's a big market. There's a lot of people that are aging in homes. There's a lot of technology that can be applied to that. I looked at that a little bit, and I just wasn't that interested in it, to be honest with you.
Okay.
There has to be passion. You have to be passionate about.
That's where I got lost in the studio concept. Is how do you find that idea and then say, "Well, I'll dedicate my life to that for the next 10 years." You know, like, well, wait, and it could be longer, right? So you're like, wait a minute, really? Sort of like, golf is a great way to be a professional. So I'm just going to start playing golf. And then I start playing golf and I go like, I really don't like golf. but this is what I chose to do. So I'm gonna practice, 8 hours a day. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
That's
There has to be a symbiotic relationship.
Idea. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, there has to be a symbiotic relationship. Like, I'm just passionate about home services. I don't know why. I started out there. I just think that it should be different. The world should be different for our homes, and that's.
Well, then let me ask you a quick question. I get that. So when you say I'm passionate about home services, when you walked into Atlanta Venture Studios, did you walk in with that? In other words, that's really kind of my market, home services.
In all
Or
honesty,
were you just a complete open book? You follow me?
I didn't want to touch it. I was a little over it. I was butt shy because I just got burned by the previous one, and I was like, "Hey, I don't want anything to do with home services."
Oh, so you were the other side.
I played around with some other things, and I was like, "What am I doing? I don't care about cybersecurity. No, that is just not me." I was like, I am actually quite passionate about home services.
The thing you hate is the thing you love, right? That's kind of.
Yeah. And so after about 2 months, I went through my own personal journey of coming back to the water well and saying, "Hey guys, I think I like this idea. I'm going to go jump in and do some real customer discovery." So I went and talked to 100 customers.
Okay.
And I asked them about their life. And I said, "Hey, tell me about this. Tell me about that." And part of the mom test is you got to ask the question, which is uncomfortable. Why would you not use this?
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, you don't want to do that because you don't want to be told that your baby's ugly. And people told me, well, trust. Yeah, I'm not going to trust somebody to come into my house that is that I don't know. And I mean, I'm the same way. Christy and I wouldn't do that. We've got 2 kids. But how can we use technology?
Before I forget this, I just want to put this into this thing. There is an interview I did with Merrick First, who started Flashpoint, and he was all over authentic demand. I mean, this was like, he started that 7-8 years ago, maybe more. And he did, it's an interesting interview because we talk about that. And he gets down to saying, you want to get to the point where they cannot not buy it. Okay.
That's right.
Right. That's the authentic demand. And I'm sure the mom test has a different way of expressing that, but that idea of authentic demand is defined very clearly, and it's very important. But go ahead. So you start talking to these customers, and what did you find out? Because you had talked to them before, like real time at Johnny On It. Now you're talking to them theoretically and philosophically, right?
Yeah. So I try to talk to people I didn't know, and they didn't know me. So that's part of the mom test. Is how
did you as much as we could? How do you avoid assumptions? Because you knew the market so well, and you've played in it, and you've been beat up by it, right? You saw what worked and what didn't. So now you're walking in with assumptions. How do you throw all those assumptions out and do that real interview that you're talking about?
By not telling them about your idea.
Okay.
Yeah, that's part of the genesis of the mom test is don't share your idea. Don't tell them about it. Mm-hmm. Just gather the information. Have them kind of direct you to your idea. If it's a true if you're solving a real problem, they'll be like, man, if only there was this. Like, if only somebody else could do it and I could text it in, that would be great. Oh, that's interesting. Do you mind if I share a little bit about what we're thinking about?
I say, yeah.
And so it's kind of like deriving at the place without telling the customer that that's where you want to go. Yeah, so 100 customers, and then we decided that we were going to launch something, and we launched something. So out of the 100 customers, 87% of them said they want help with proactive maintenance. If you could just tell me when my filters need to get changed, that'd be great. So we did that, launched V1 of Zeto at that right there. And yeah, very interesting learnings.
Did you charge right away?
Yes, absolutely. You did. $99 a month.
Right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate.
So did you go back to those 100 people with the offer of $100 a month?
That's right. Yeah.
And so how many of the 100 actually said, I'll pay you $99 a month?
17. So we got 17 customers to
Did you have to build
pay.
technology first of any type? Or was this
No.
all spreadsheet driven?
Now it's all spreadsheet driven. Second time entrepreneur.
That's a problem for entrepreneurs. A lot of them are like you. They know the market and they understand the problem and they envision the solution, but they're not technology guys. They're not David Cumming who could sit down and program it. What do they do now? It's like John Birdsong. He had that same problem with Kyle Porter. They got to a point where they needed a program, and they said, "We're both promoters. We're sales guys. What are we going to sell now? We don't have a product." So what did you do?
That's right. Built it on spreadsheets.
That's what.
So built it on spreadsheets, and we haven't written one line of code yet.
Good.
Because we pivoted 4 times in the last 8 months to try and find that product market fit.
Can you give me a quick rundown of like those 4 pivots, like you said?
So we launched the first one at proactive maintenance, how to do that, and
so we'll keep up with what has to be done in the house.
Correct. And then what we realized was people need help with it, but their credit card helps them do that because the credit card auto pays and auto reminds.
Right.
So we're like, okay, we need to quickly pivot out of that. So we went into a different model where everything was prepaid under one monthly bill. So think about $1 million home. You spend on average 1% to 2% of your home value in upkeep. So we said, okay, well, we'll take that 1% and then reinvest it into kind of maintaining your home. And our customers were like, no, that's not going to work. I don't spend that much money on my home. So that was another interesting learning around consumer behavior where, yes, you have $1 million home, but you don't think that you spend that much money.
Right. They don't know.
But if you they just don't know. But if you add up, if your accountant goes and adds it up at the end of the year, you're pretty close to that number. Man. So what's
baby? You know how much it costs to take care of it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So then that didn't work because our customers were like, no, we're not going to pay for that. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, that's interesting. So they're like, we want everything like semi-wrapped into it. And I want my to-do list wrapped into it. So we launched another program, $99 a month and $299 a month. And it is slightly different variances. And we got some early traction on that. And then I just went to the team and I was like, hey, I don't think this is going to work. If I can just put my consumer hat on, I don't think I'm going to pay $99 a month in 6 months' time. Yes, we're doing a lot of work. We were just analyzing how customers were using us, and we helped them knock out all these things. And then 6 months, 9 months from now, you're still getting charged $99 a month. And it's just kind of like, I don't know, it's just kind of weird. So then we went like, hey, can we re-engineer this to be more of like a Costco model?
But did you feel at that point that they weren't getting enough value, that they'd probably cancel? Is that
correct?
The feeling? That's what you were worried about.
Feeling,
right?
That was my
I was just trying to
feeling,
put words to what you said. Okay. So then you go to a Costco model.
Yeah. So we went to a Costco model. With Costco, you pay $120 a year.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. And then you get all this great value throughout the year. And the other thing that we realized is consumers don't want multiple vendors in their house. You don't want multiple people in your house.
Yeah.
So we said, what if we completely change the game? We control the experience. We give excellent customer service. We treat the customer with excellence. And it's one brand that kind of takes care of your home. I understand that now it's a more of a labor-intensive business. However, I would argue we could use that as a moat around our business. So now you get a private home manager for $250 a year. You get a private home manager where you can text we coordinate and schedule anything.
Okay.
You send us, hey, I need a plumber. We'll take care of it. And then you have access to Zeto services, which is we've got the Zeto service team, kind of like a handyman service. to help you with your to-do list.
Okay.
You say, hey, I want my gutters cleaned. Consider it done. And we're just windows
Now
clean,
for the
gutter
professional trades, more like, the HVAC or, got a electrical panel failure, those kind of things. How does that work?
Yeah. So we'll outsource that to our third-party vendors that we have relationships with, and then manage that process. And then everything else kind of like outside the home or the to-do list, we'll take care of it. So for example,
the outsourced vendors, do they bill you? Is there
they bill the
central
customer.
billing?
They bill the customer.
They bill the customer
today.
directly. Okay.
Today. Because remember, we're still in a spreadsheet, right? Yeah, we can't build the whole world right now. We've got to do one step at a time. But it's important that we nail this experience and create authentic demand. So, for example, here's a use case: what our customers experience. Several weeks ago, it was very cold. We sent a text message: "Hey, if you want firewood, it's $275 for half a cord. All you have to do is respond yes, and we'll have it delivered." And because we know exactly where Charlie Pepperelli likes to store his firewood in his home, because we've taken a picture of it, and we've asked you that question during in-person onboarding, we don't have to ask you again. You respond yes via text, and the next day or within a couple of days, firewood shows up where you keep firewood. It's nicely stacked. It's a good customer experience. And we think, and the response from our customers has been, this is unreal.
So you do there's also proactive marketing that's actually going on too, to get ahead of them of what they need. Okay. So that's so how do you actually make money then? So you're charging this management fee. That's an annual fee?
So it's an annual fee. We charge $250 a year.
Okay.
And then every service is charged for whatever the service is. So during the onboarding, we'll capture the number of windows. We'll capture the linear footage of your gutters. We'll capture square footage of your pressure washable area. We charge our service experts at $90 an hour. We'll even meet your vendors on site. If you guys are home or we're in this interview and you've got a plumber that needs to come, well, Zeto's team can be on site, which is another interesting thing, is our customers are allowing us in their homes while they're away, which tells me that they're starting to trust us. And
is that extra for all of that? I mean, you must charge for
we do charge for being on site. Yes.
I got it. Well, it seems like it's pretty labor intensive. There's going to be a lot of people that you've got to have working for you.
Yes. We just closed a round of funding, and we are hiring.
How much did you raise?
Vendors, folks to help us. We raised a small round, $650,000.
Okay. Well, good for you. Well, congratulations on launching again.
Yeah,
but how
thanks.
did you know that this is it? How do you know that you're on it now? I didn't mean to say on it because that sounds like Johnny on it. Okay. But how do you know that you got the right product market fit, that your pricing model is right, that you don't wind up getting down that road that you went through on Johnny on it? What have you done anything to test that?
Our customers are starting to refer other customers.
Okay.
So let's think about authentic demand. Customers our wait list is now 70 people in I think 40 days. We had people just come in and add their name to the wait list. Those are the types of things that we're starting to look at, and it's very exciting. You can start feeling that.
You said in your mission statement that I picked up, it says every home in America. Okay. And I saw somewhere else, in Atlanta. Okay. So I know you're working right now in Atlanta, right? Are you really
Correct.
have a vision for every home in America?
I don't know why a private home manager cannot be in every home in America. I can't think of a reason why not. From an execution perspective, that's a different conversation. But
very different. Yeah, that's pretty big.
But why can't that exist? I can't tell. I can't have somebody tell me why.
All right. Well, this has been. So when do you think, just to end it up, so tell me what your your goals for 2022 are for Zeto. And then what are like the 2025 goals?
Yeah. So goals for 2022, we'll be at 400 customers. We'll be at 72 customers by the end of Q1.
Wow.
We'll then add 96 on top of that in Q2. Q3's goals is 106 and 129 in Q4 to hit our 400 goals. So we're very, very strategically
a big picture,
focused.
if you go out now to 25, so now you go another 3 years, what do those numbers look like, by the end of 25? If you got 400 customers at the end of this year, what does it look like at the end of 25?
Yeah, we'll have 5,000 customers by 2025.
5,000. How many cities would that be?
We'd probably be starting to look at our second city, if we're not in it, very close to launching into it. The goal is to kind of understand Atlanta, understand the infrastructure, understand the technology, understand all of that, create the playbook. And then I find a lot of entrepreneurs want to go to a second city very quickly. Like, we've got enough homes right here to figure it out.
You mean like those Johnny On It guys?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What I'm saying, what's interesting to me is asking you these questions and just hearing your answers. You sound like such a much more accomplished entrepreneur and leader and CEO. I mean, you know your numbers, you know where you're going to be. If I asked you and drilled down how you're going to get those 76 customers by the next quarter or whatever the heck it is, you have an answer for me. And it's going to be an answer that's going to be based on experience, not one of these kind of things like, oh man, we'll just be there. Don't worry about it. It's going to be great. You're all over it. You sound so much different than the man that I talked to when you were commuting from Columbus, Georgia, to start Johnny On It.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. It's not my doing. There's tons of resources available for entrepreneurs at atlantaventures.com. It's called a strategic one-pager. We just went through the exercise. But, you do have to have, Bob taught me this. You have to have clear KPIs, and everybody has to be aligned. And it's just the way. You can't get to the PGA Tour if your team's not aligned.
Yeah, but here's the interesting part too, and we'll end with this, okay, is look how long it took you to duplicate that team that you had on the PGA Tour, focused on getting you to win every tournament, right? So that you could then get your card so that you could go to the, to the PGA Tour, if you will. I mean, that's the ultimate goal that you had.
Sure.
Now you've got these guys, like you said, it was you and your former partner, okay, with Johnny On It. And then you had this loose group of advisors. Now you're sitting here with Atlanta Ventures, with John Birdsong, with AT, with David Cummings, with Bob Lewis, you have this team of people that has given you the right methodologies, okay, the right training tools, if you will, and the right tools and money so that you can be confident that what you need to do is just execute. And that brings it back to golf. So I think you've come a long way and you've got a great team around you.
Thanks. I'm just humbled that I can be part of the journey with them. It's been fun.
And what happened to Christy and the family? How old are the kids now?
Daniel is 7 and Jude is 4, about to be 5.
We're all on track. Amazing.
Yeah.
This is just a great story. And thank you for sharing that with me. And
Charlie, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I really appreciate Christy allowing you to even share what journey she's been through. That was a very difficult journey for her. But there's a lot of moms that are young moms that are on a similar journey, and it never gets talked about. So everybody thinks they're alone and they're unique. But nope, we're all in it together. So thank God for what he's done in your life and how he brought you through that stressful period of time. So I'm gonna just close this out, and then I'll come back and we'll say goodbye. Okay.
Thanks for having me, Charlie.
You got it. Well, thanks for joining me and Christian on this Charlie Paparelli show. It's been brilliant. I mean, there's no straight path to success, but having the great team in place is what makes all the difference. Thanks for joining us, and please subscribe at paparelli.com. Just give your email and you'll never miss an episode. Thank you.